stay right here and enjoy the carpet and the crayons, and we're used to this, so we're absolutely more used to this. This is a gift to our parents, by the way, and to me. I get a chance to see them all the time. So if I'm being particularly boring that day, I can watch. Oh. Now, we just talked about a mountaintop experience. What does a mountaintop experience feel like? Do you know it when you are there? How has it felt to you? Amazing? Scary? Powerful? Humbling? While all three of these great prophets had stood on mountaintops, we as persons of faith then have to take these experiences that we read about and figure out metaphorically how they relate to our lives. Okay? So again, what has been your mountaintop experience? On Thursday night, during our beverage and Bible class at the local Tuttle's bar and bowling alley. That's right. It's great. We talked about mountaintop experiences. And some had experiences that were very high and wonderful. And some of us had mountaintop experiences that were much lower, much more difficult, much more painful. So there were positive experiences and negative experiences. The mountaintop for some of us was the addition of something amazing in their lives. The mountaintop for others was the fact that they had been so low, brought so low, that they realized there was no place to go but up. One of my own experiences was my divorce back in 1991. And let me tell you, it threw me for a loop. My world was turned upside down. I won't go into all the particulars because I'm supposed to keep boundaries. But let's just say I had a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. And in 1995, I took my first class at seminary because that part of my life needed to be clarified too. And I did not go to be a minister. That's not why I went to seminary, and you don't have to go there to be a minister either. You can just go and take a class or two, just to find out some more things about our faith, and that's what I did. But you know, as I look back on it, that period of time of being so low and having to do all of that work was one of my mountaintop experiences. So you see, mountaintop experiences can be giddily high or bone-crushingly low. In both cases, there is a clarity of heart, mind, body, and soul. It doesn't have to feel great, but it must feel real. It feels almost as if you have some hidden knowledge that you didn't have before. It feels almost divine, a revelation, and sacred. So perhaps you can't remember a mountaintop experience in your life, but if you could imagine it, what would it be like? And then once you had it, could you possibly be like Jesus and shut up about it? I know I can't. It's one of those things that you do want and need to pass on once you've had that mountaintop experience. That's a little of what we'll be exploring as we delve into this story today. The events on the mountain, changes in appearances, apparitions, voices, cause both awe and fear in James and Peter and John. That Jesus would meet these great prophets, Elijah and Moses, well, it has a link. I'm coming back to understanding the metaphor of what's going on. What's going on when the three meet? They are all prophets who have had to deal with empire in their life. Empire of Egypt with Moses, leading them out of slavery. The empire of the northern kingdom and its cahoots with Assyria. And the empire of Rome with Jesus. Now let me explain empire. You've heard that word tossed about every now and then. Empire is the political, economic, militaristic, and cultural domination of one country or one group of people over another. The dominant country then begins to subsume and subordinate the less powerful countries and cultures underneath its power. Egypt conquered many countries to become an empire, as did Rome. Today is somewhat different. Now, while the United States still has the most powerful military in the world, bar none, much of our power isn't in our military. It is in our economic power. It's not for nothing that the U.S. dollar is still the economic denomination of choice around the world. And it's no surprise that China is working hard to supplant the dollar with the renminbi. Renminbi. It's not the yen. I wish it was the yen, but that's Japanese. It's the renminbi. Say that after me 3 times. We use economics as a weapon instead of our military. Now, frankly, I'm happy that we're not using the military as much, but we are using our economics. Just ask Russia or Iran or North Korea. Believe me, it is still a tool for controlling situations around the world. We do have powers of an empire. Now, tradition suggests the mountain on which Jesus stood that day was Hermon, which overlooked the great Roman stronghold and seaport of Caesarea Philippi. Now, Caesarea Philippi was basically a Greco-Roman city. It was a gorgeous place. It had a coliseum of its own, a racetrack, a place where gladiators could fight and Christians could die later on. I visited there when I was in Israel the last time, and there was the summer resort of the king of Israel, and it's built right next to the water. And some of you are nodding your head. I think you've seen this before. They built the house over the ocean so that they had their private pool there in the ocean as it came in. Wouldn't you love that? Wasn't that great? Incredibly wealthy, incredibly powerful. And Hermon is looking over this city. And so this is a primary link between Moses and Elijah and Jesus. The disciples, led by Peter, try but don't succeed to get what's going on. And surprisingly, they receive instructions to withhold this story for the time being. Perhaps time to ponder would help this experience work to inspire their faith and commitment to oppose the powers and empires they will truly face. We gain a greater sense of growing faith and commitment from Elisha in an intense episode surrounding legacy and leave-taking by his beloved mentor Elijah. Now, this story from 2 Kings is also in today's lectionary, and it has to do with seeing Elijah mounting up into the heaven with chariots. Now, you probably remember this story vaguely, but it goes something like this. Elisha is walking with his mentor, Elijah. Elijah is the older one. Elisha is the younger one. And Elijah says, "It is my time to die." And Elisha says, "Well, I don't really want to talk about that, but I want to go along with you." And Elijah says, "Well, you must stay here, and I will walk on to the town of Gilgal." And they get to the town of Gilgal, and Elisha is still with them. And the holy men there of the city say, "Well, you know, Elijah is about ready to leave this place." And Elisha says, "I don't want to talk about that." And Elijah says, "You should stay here in Gilgal because I'm moving on to Bethel." And Elisha says, "No, I want to be with you." So he walks with Elijah to Bethel. And in Bethel, the holy men meet him again. And they say, "You know, Elijah is about ready to die." And Elisha says, "I don't really want to talk about it." And Elijah tells him, "I am going to move on to Jericho. You must stay here." And Elisha says, "No, Elijah, I want to follow you. You are my master." And again, Elijah and Elisha move on to Jericho. And there they meet holy men again who tell them the same story. And Elijah tells him, "I'm going now to the river Jordan." And one more time, Elisha says, no, I will follow you. I will go with you. And he does. And they reach the river Jordan. And Elijah takes off his robe. And he smacks the river with it. And the waters part, much like Moses. And they walk through to the other side to dry land. And Elijah says, it is time. And Elisha says, I must have twice of the Spirit that you have in order to do and continue on with your ministry in this world. And Elijah says, if you watch me as I leave all the way, then you too will have these powers of Spirit within you. And the chariot of fire comes down from the heavens, and it picks up sound effects. And it picks up Elijah. And he gets in, and he goes all the way up into the heavens, Elijah watching him. And the robe there of Elijah has been left. Elisha rips up all his robes, and he takes this robe, and he smacks it on the water. The waters part. He puts it on, and he walks along his way. I think the leave-taking, the needing to leave, is what makes it so powerful. Elijah had to leave. Jesus had to leave. Moses could not go into the promised land. He had to leave. He had to die in order for the people to take the lessons that they had learned. I wonder sometimes if it is that never to be seen again part of the stories that have the greatest impact on our lives. I wonder if by parting and never returning to our mentors empowers us. By sticking around and not going away, mentors psychologically prevent us from growing into our own wisdom, our own selves. I was speaking to a professor of mine from United Theological Seminary the other day. We were at the Board of Trustees meeting together, and we were talking about the women's movement and how it had really backslid for a while. During the 60s, she was a major part of it, Dr. Mary Bednarowski was, and she said, but boy, you know, Reinhold Niebuhr was right. Anything worthwhile takes more than a lifetime. And that is our hope. That is our hope. So, I was thinking about the women's movement and the problems with ISIS that we were having, and with Boko Haram, which basically means do not follow Western education. And I'm thinking, here are people who cannot take the gift of love, of God, of their own mentor, Muhammad, because they are so stuck. They cannot take the road. And they are so fearful. They are so fearful. So that the wars we are fighting cannot be won on the battlefield. Boko Haram has to do with men's fear of women's power, seeing Western culture as the erosion of traditional male domination power. In other words, they are experiencing the Western cultural empire infringing on their male dominance. Now I say, let's infringe away. But this is where their rage comes from. It is underneath, it is psychological, it is internal, and it has not raised to the surface yet within their culture. This war cannot be won militarily. It cannot. The only way it can be won is by them learning and taking the gift of love from their own mentor, from Muhammad. Somehow these cultures need to figure out a way to share power with women in their culture, and it'll take more than one lifetime. Those great lessons, mountaintop revelations of equality, for instance, must be passed on to others. Our friends, our families, our children. Passing it on is our mechanism of hope. Jesus, Elijah, and Moses were all having to deal with empire. Their struggles were going to take far longer than one lifetime. They had to pass it on. Moses passed on the mission of freedom to the many tribes he led out of Egypt. Elijah passed on the mission of justice to Elisha. And Jesus passed the mission of truly loving our neighbors on to his followers. Jesus' disciples and all those who were healed and taught and amazed along the way down to this day, our very selves, we've still got a lot of work to do. Now, none of us perhaps has the power of Jesus, Elijah, or Moses, but we still have the paths that we've been given to follow. We have been directed via our mountaintop experiences of clarity, our mountaintop experiences of reality, to follow our path, which is much like a thread running through our lives. It's a thread that we begin to follow, and if we live in hope, pass it on. Hear this poem by William Stafford that helps us define our path. It's called The Way It Is. There's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you're pursuing. You have to explain about the thread. But it is hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. It is real. Tragedies happen. People get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of that thread. You have been given a gift in your life. Let us honor it with hope and love, and may we too pass this on, this blessedness, to our children. Amen.